we're now going to change it completely, as far away from Europe. We're going to the States. We're going to make business aviation even greater. We've got a fantastic panel. First up is Lou Sino. Lou needs no introduction, except he has now got an extra business card to add to his others. Lou is now, we're delighted to have Lou here in his new role at IADA, the International Aircraft Dealers Association, but he's still very much carrying his GSSI card. And actually, there's a quiz question. Lou Sino will be attending Oshkosh this year. And in a second, you can write on Slido how many Oshkoshes he's been to and win a prize. I've no idea what that prize is. Not quite, but it's a staggering number. While you're listening to the session, please fill in the feedback forms. Next to Lou, David Hernandez, shareholder of Enterprise, Joan Roberts, IATS. I'm sure many of you will have wired money to Joan in the past, and probably all of you have had emails from someone pretending to be Joan in the past. Bruce Marshall from AIC, keeping up the Oklahoma Mafia on this panel, and Matt Stringfellow from Soljets. Right, Matt, when are business jets going to be banned in the US?
Never.
Okay. Did you see an upturn in interest after the election? As a broker, were people calling you?
We did, yeah. It took, we felt the interest coming leading into the election, and I think it took roughly about a month for everyone to absorb the results of it. So therefore, our fourth quarter was actually not what we expected it to be, but since then we've felt a tremendous amount of momentum moving into 2025.
Joan, you see deal data live. You've probably got you and actually, to be fair, Bruce Getzer. You've got a brilliant view of the market. Have you seen a Trump bump in fourth quarter?
We definitely saw a Trump bump. Our fourth quarter was very strong. We literally were like less than 1% off of closings for the fourth quarter. We turned deals away again at the end of the year, and so if we had been able to close all those deals, we might not have even been less than 1% off of 2023 numbers. But January was a very strong month, so definitely I think there was a collective sigh of relief all across the United States, and everybody was ready to go.
And that sigh of relief is what? You had a clear decision.
Yes.
Do you think you'd have had the same bump if the result had been different?
I don't. I mean, there was so much turmoil 4 years ago. I don't want to ever relive that again.
Bruce?
Yeah, I think we saw 2024 end on a really good note overall for the year. I think we were up about 12% in our business. So we had a strong fourth quarter, a strong year, and things seem to be continuing on into the year this year. It's good.
Lou, how optimistic are you about 2025?
Well, I polled a number of our broker dealers, and I mean, the responses I got were, demand remains strong. Supply is not high, especially in newer aircraft, 5 years and under, and pricing remains firm. So were some of the comments I got recently.
David, what are your clients telling you?
Yeah, I think the big one is just to be cautiously optimistic to see what's going to happen in the future. The big things that spook me is the tariffs. Yeah. And how that's going to play out, and understanding what that means after reading some of the purchase agreements. And you got a lot of microeconomic issues out there that just affect the economy, whether it's interest rates, whether it's prices of things that you can't control, like property taxes, personal debt, credit card debt, all of these things. The economy's run by people who spend, and if the spending stops, the economy's going to shrink. But certainly the stock market really helped people in a positive way to say, look, let's think about making a change. But when the company stocks start dropping, if in the event that does happen, I think that's going to spook a lot of companies that are deciding whether or not to purchase an aircraft.
Matt, you're optimistic? It's been a turbulent week, hasn't it?
It's been actually first quarters. This is one of our best first quarters. Actually, it's our best first quarter in the 9 years we've been in business. So we're very optimistic moving into this year. I think our concerns, like David was saying, are interest rates. The prediction for those to drop has not happened. There's not a lot of confidence that's gonna come anytime soon. We still will struggle with some pretty large inflation issues. And yeah, I guess that's it.
So it's going to be, would you predict that we're going to see more transactions in 2025 than 2024?
Yeah, I think so far. I mean, OEM backlogs are like we've heard several times. 1.5 to 2 years out. As long as that sustains, and we don't see any type of operator restructuring, liquidation events that would impact inventory levels, then yes, we're very optimistic.
Bruce? You optimistic? Do you think this week's taken some of the shine off?
No, I don't think so. We were very busy, as I said. We've gone into January, a very busy month, and I don't see it coming to an end for a while.
Lee?
Well, let me give you an IATA data point, if I may. So, in aggregate, the IATA broker-dealer membership signed 130 acquisition agreements in Q4. Now, given what we learned the last 2 days about how long pre-buys are taking, I think we could say, here's 130 transactions in the pipeline or close to it for this year.
David, let's talk about everyone's favorite end of the afternoon topic, tax.
Okay. I think from a tax perspective, that's a positive for the business aviation community. You're going to see a lot of the tax initiatives that the Biden administration tried to put in place kind of grind to a halt. You're not going to see the audits, I think, because frankly they're cutting the money and the funding, and unfortunately most IRS employees are wondering if they have a job going forward. So their primary focus is job security. But so the audits, the focus on personal use, I think is going to grind to a halt. On the positive side, you may see bonus depreciation come back. Assuming people understand what that means, I think that's a good thing. But from a tax perspective, there's a lot of good news, and I think that's one of the motivations that either people are waiting to see what happens this year. I don't think it's going to be retroactive to 2024, but I think from the tax perspective, it's going to be pretty good year.
And I think that if they do reinstate 100% bonus depreciation, of course, the supply is going to go down, prices are going to go up.
Matt, do you see it making a big difference to the fourth quarter?
I think it's kind of priced in. Most of my clients are expecting that with Trump in office. I think it's kind of known it's going to come back. It'll probably be retroactive to January 1st. It's definitely going to help, but I'm not sure how much of a boost it's going to give.
It's really interesting that they've actually priced it in already, that they're confident. Lou, do you see it making?
I agree with David. I think, seeing bonus come back, it's going to lower your after-tax cost of owning the airplane. We talked about operating leases. When you price 100% bonus depreciation into an operating lease, it lowers the incremental cost. So that would be great if that came back.
This is such a cheery panel in comparison with the last one.
Well, we're last, so come on.
And this is an easy topic, right? I mean, you saw the stats, you saw the numbers, you saw the activity. It's good to be in business aviation if you're in the States.
Except the one area that you guys have this ridiculous system where you change civil servants after an election. And the FAA has got a fantastic deputy administrator at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I know that my colleagues at Gamma were very happy with Mr. Whitaker. They're very disappointed with his resignation, but Chris Rocheleau now from NBAA, I'd love to see him affirmed as the permanent administrator. So I think That's great.
Yeah, and Chris is a great guy, and I like Chris, but there's no guarantee that he will get the permanent.
No,
and
you're right.
The FAA is in the last few weeks, the FAA has not been that helpful to business aviation.
Well, he's got Chris has got a good background. He's got a safety background, which is one of the major concerns that's only been exacerbated by what the activities in the last week. So, but he's walking into a hornet's nest.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, he's inheriting a very difficult situation with understaffing, not having adequate people in the control towers, having outdated systems. There are a lot of things that he's going to have to focus on, but I guess for our industry, as Lou commented, it's great to have someone with a little bit of exposure to business aviation finally in a significant role, and hopefully his appointment will be approved, and he'll go from an acting administrator to the administrator.
And thank God they appointed an administrator, because we were not getting any hard copy certificates of registration for anybody. Planes were grounded because of it. The only reason was they had no one to sign them, because there wasn't an administrator. So thank God, starting Monday of this week, we've started getting certificates of registration again. I mean, it's huge.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
And they're soon to be digital, right? The certificates of registration.
This, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
This came up last week. David and I were at the NBA transaction conference. Can you get a flywire anymore for somebody closing and then going international? Are those a thing of the past?
You can get a flywire, but it's only good for 30 days. So if your trip's longer than that, you can't get back into the United States because your flywire is expired.
And let's go through the changes at the registry. You were asking.
Yeah, I think once and I know it's been announced, I know it's supposed to be like January 18th, but once we do get the digital registration certificates, I mean, I've heard, I don't know, Joan, you probably know better than I do, apparently a flywire would no longer be required.
We got a memo early in January, 2 memos. One saying they were no longer going to issue certificates of registration. They were going to be digital. And that was and they were going to quit giving us file stamp copies of documents, which were also going to change the requirements for signatures on documents. So we kind of freaked out for 10 days. Then they issued 2 more memos. Well, that's not going to take effect till fall because we don't even have the system built to issue digital certificates. So thank God for that. We have a little bit of time to figure it out. But yeah, I mean, if that happens, we won't need flywires anymore.
Yeah, both of these issues are tied to their CARES initiative, which is something that was authorized and funded almost 7 years ago, and it's been promised for an ongoing time. Now, they're talking sometime end of the year, maybe October of 2025, when some of these things might take effect. But it remains to be seen, one, whether they meet their own deadlines. I think it's great that they're going to be issuing electronic copies of certificates of registration. Back in the day when I was in the fractional business and we were registering aircraft just every day, hundreds of registrations a year, we were always having to chase those aircraft down to get the pink copies on them, and then within the time before those expired, we had to get the hard cards onto the aircraft. So doing it this way is going to be great, but we also need to make sure that the FAA is going to have a secure platform for delivering these emails, because we all know that emails can get hacked very easily, and if someone's watching an aircraft transaction, they might potentially hold that certificate of registration hostage for a ransom or use it for some other nefarious purpose.
Well, and I wonder if they're going to issue them digitally, how are they going to be? On the pilot's phone, and he has that in the cockpit? What if you don't have the same pilot every time? I mean, I don't really get it, how it's going to work, but we'll see. But speaking of the CARES Act, the DAR talked about it earlier, and it's going to be a system that will allow anyone to file some of their own documents with the FAA. And I just want to say that our company has decided if you come to us to correct all your problems that you've created for your title, we're going to charge you 3 times what we would have charged you if you came to us originally to file your documents, because there are so many idiosyncrasies with the FAA, digital certificates, the code has to be visible completely, and pilots can't sign documents, things like that. So
When Kindon was talking, I thought you could easily have a few drinks and put a lean against someone's aircraft.
Oh, go ahead.
I think the CARES Act, I mean, from a practitioner's perspective, we've been looking at it for years, and it looks like a great tool for the industry to use. The problem's going to be, as Joan mentioned, for me, understanding what happens and how to fix things afterwards. I haven't thought about charging folks 3 times as much, but billable hours, that does sound pretty good. But it's going to require some patience. But I think the biggest thing now, I hate to say it again, is the FAA personnel and what's going to happen to them, because they're worried about, are they going to be the next target of DOGE, or they have to go out and buy Teslas? Who knows? But at the end of the day, if you have more Teslas in your parking lot, you're probably better off at this point.
But in all seriousness, the reason Whitaker resigned was because Musk was after him. There was some.
Well, he fined SpaceX. FAA fined SpaceX for a launch, and
Yeah, Al, I mean, aside from what Bruce, Joan, and David described on the title and filing side, I'll go back to my colleagues at Gamma. And when I go to a Gamma meeting and a number of the OEM members are here, I mean, what I hear meeting after meeting after meeting is the inability for people to get products and airplanes certified. And I'm not sure now with what's going on. I mean, COVID came, all these engineers got to work from home. Many of them were retired early. We understand the FAA is looking for 1,100 engineers. Have they hired them? And then you look at sort of our fixed wing and helicopter business, and then you add in the Jobies, the Betas, and all of the advanced air mobility who are looking for certification. And I see that as a major hurdle.
And I think if you look at, OEMs who have got fantastic relationships and the delays they've had, that's a huge issue. One of the reasons the FAA brought in, was it January? It doesn't seem the change of letting you have access to documents was privacy. And are you finding privacy as an issue? Are your owners worried about privacy or privacy, whichever you prefer?
Yeah, privacy. I think so. Yeah, I mean, but number one, I think ADS-B with this flight radar 24 tracking and ability to see anyone anywhere poses some security risks. And a lot of my guys, they file for their independent ICAO identifier to try to not be traceable.
Gaza.
And then now, I think now on a bill of sale, they actually require you to add a phone number and an email address. That's new, right?
registration application.
Registration application, yeah. So I mean, they're totally, slowly collecting more information. You no longer can just put an airplane in LLC and stay, a non-owner.
Yeah, David, I'm curious. Your clients, do some of them do the blocking thing? Is that still?
Yeah, all of them do.
Yeah.
All of them. I mean, so what Lou mentioned, you can block your aircraft tail number. So if you go to FlightAware right now and put in a tail number, you can see where they're flying. And a lot of people do that for corporate, I hate to call it spying. But if you want to see where companies are going, potentially for a merger and acquisition, you track the planes and see where the companies are. But a lot of people block them or enter in a double trust structure to try to keep a lot of privacy. And it works in large part, but you still know how to find them. And now it's the ADS-B.
It's a lot more difficult to circumnavigate the ADS-B part of it.
That's a tough one to get past.
It's really interesting because a few years back, having flash mobs was all the rage, where they'd organize very quickly impromptu people to get together to perform and sing and dance, and we all thought it was very entertaining. But now with the potential, with this type of technology not protecting the privacy, you have the potential for flash protest mobs, so that we can end up with groups like we're outside the doors here, suddenly instantly tracking down individuals flying on their private aircrafts and their missions and being tracked and interrupted by that. And I think it's been a misguided focus of the FAA in terms of they created their privacy office and staffed it in 2022. And a couple of the initiatives that have come out of that office have wreaked havoc in our end of the industry for myself and for Joan, because they first cut us off from seeing ancillary documents which support aircraft registrations and are necessary for us to do our jobs. And then just most recently, we had our October trick-or-treat trick, our early Christmas present, where they eliminated or announced on very short notice, they were eliminating our visibility into work in progress. So when you get a transaction getting ready to close, everything's lined up. All the parties, their consultants, everybody, buyers, sellers, everyone's ready to do their deal on the aircraft. And suddenly something pops up in the working index, and we can't identify what that is. Is it going to be something that's going to impact the transaction, or is it going to be something that's not really relevant, or it's going to be in recordable form and we're all going to be happy? But that's only complicated things, and I think it's just a misfocus. It's really based on PII. And of course, we've heard all about PPI during this conference, but PII is personal identification information, some of the things Matt was mentioning. Now, in terms of name and address, maybe a phone number or an email, but the goal is really to try to keep sensitive personal identification information out of the system. And prior to the creation of this privacy office, the FAA had really a very realistic approach to it. They said, we don't ask you to put sensitive information on any of our documentation or anything that we require to register an aircraft. So your social security numbers, your tax numbers, your passport numbers, your driver's licenses, these aren't necessary for an aircraft registration, yet someone in the privacy office decided we can't see documents or share them with our customer base because they may contain this information. And I think it's an illusory thing because, again, they don't require it. So the FAA sort of reversed their approach on this topic, and I think it's caused some problems when their focus really should be on the issues Matt raised.
I 100% agree with everything Bruce said. The only thing I can say is good news is exam is caught up at the FAA to now just 3 weeks behind from 6 months. So since we can't see the work in progress documents, we just have to wait 3 weeks till it's recorded.
Yeah, it's good. They had it down to 10 or 12 days, but unfortunately, as we got into the fourth quarter, it bumped back out to almost a month again.
We've been in the middle of a few imports coming from different countries, and because they can't see the work in progress documents, it's caused multiple day delays. And you're talking about pilots on the ground. You're talking about a lot of things set up in order to get the airplane over.
We've got someone saying, have other aircraft registries not gone digital already? Surely the FAA can learn from these advancements. Any comments?
I don't have any idea. Do you, Bruce?
I really don't have an answer to that.
Will Trump mean a rollback in compliance documents? Does anyone, is cutting red tape, does anyone expect to know your customer or to get things to be lowered?
I don't think it'll ever be less. I think we're just going to keep doing more and more know your customer.
Yeah, I think with compliance, I don't think they've got to that yet. When they do, we'll see. But I do think one of the previous questions about how the U.S. is differing from Europe, the SAF fuel credits, I think those are probably going to die a very quick death. I don't think you're going to get the SAF fuel credits going forward. Because so how this works in the States, so everything Biden did, Trump's reversing. And SAF fuel credits is one of the big Inflation Reduction Act that they wanted to put in place to promote SAF in the United States. And I think that's going to be gone.
One of the questions is a blatant plug from Eric Lewin, who works with Bruce, so we're just going to ignore that one. That is 100% from Eric Lewin. So we won't answer that. Do you, we're always looking for conspiracy theories. Does part of you think that Warren Buffett is driving everyone towards fractional?
The funny thing is, I've had 3 people sell planes in December and go to fractionals, simply because it's easy. Yeah. I mean, it's just turnkey, and they want to get out of it. And they said, look, I'm just done with this. I'm done with the rising cost of pilots. They're done with the rising cost of parking an aircraft, all of the rising costs associated with this. And it's part of the inflation that, you know, that you don't really talk about in the aviation world, but the costs are going up.
Lou, you had a long career as an aircraft financier. What's your view on the US aircraft finance market at the moment?
I think it's, you know, certainly rates have come up, but if you look at, and you've been to National Aircraft Finance Association, I mean, right now, I think there is a lender for virtually any type of aircraft and any type of credit strategy. You know, we've got some of the money center banks who do investment grade credits, and we have some non-banking institutions. We have a couple here that do, you know, a little more of the out-of-the-box type transactions. And I think if again, I mentioned it earlier, but and somebody mentioned operating leases, but if operating leases come back, spurred by bonus depreciation, I think that's going to become another financing vehicle that you'll see in the next couple of years.
And there's still a lot of cash out there.
Yeah, true.
As he's a lawyer, I'd like to make a formal apology. It was not Eric Lewin. It was someone else curious on closing platforms, or someone pretending to be not Eric Lewin. How many aircraft are you seeing financed at the moment, Matt? Are you seeing?
We're probably 30% max, 20 to 30%. But a lot of time they'll pay cash and then use a private line of credit. You know.
Do you agree with that sort of figure?
Yeah,
I would, yep.
I think you initially see aircraft, you know, being purchased with cash, but then financing occur after the fact.
Someone's saying, let's remember that paying the government more taxes or fines won't change the weather. We're getting deep now. Any questions in the room for anyone? Yes, Angus. Mike is refusing to throw the ball.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes. Angus Beattie, freelance journalist, and by some considerable distance, the least expert person in the room on any of these topics. But you've kind of painted a picture of a marketplace buoyed by the certainty given by the election, and then alluded to all of the uncertainty caused by the new administration. And I'm genuinely curious about why there's not more of a disconnect there.
I'm by nature a Davy Downer. No, I'm just joking. I look at, you know, I'm an attorney, right? And all the attorneys, they get paid to look at risk. And so there's a lot of things out there. When you look at all of the crises and bubbles that have occurred in the past, it's all driven by either inflation or uncertainty or risk. And so tariffs are a huge risk. And sure, they're delayed a month, but when they come back, if tariffs kick in, that's going to be an enormous inflationary wave hitting the entire country. So those are the risks we're in. And those are the talks I have with my clients about, I'm going to wait on this one. I'm going to just see how this settles. So it's great that the previous administration, the NBA's word attack on business aviation is no longer a concern. But there are a lot of concerns out there, both from a micro and macroeconomic level, that we as an industry need to be concerned about and be prepared for if they do indeed come to fruition.
Not safe. Health and safety. Just quickly following up on that, I hear your optimism loud and clear, and I understand the foundation for it, but I do also hear these concerns about, you know, the known unknowns and the unpredictability of some aspects of this. When I, as a reporter, talk to industry associations like NBAA, Aerospace Industries Association, and I say, are you going to engage with the Trump administration on, you know, getting some of these issues straightened out over the FAA and the tariffs? They basically say, off the record, these things are a complete disaster. On the record, no, we're not going to speak up because nobody's allowed to tell the emperor he's not wearing any clothes. Is that a problem, that the industry can't really have honest engagement with an administration that doesn't really, that is in sort of broadcast-only mode?
I think everything's fine and everyone should buy a Tesla. So
No, I was going to say, if you look back at some of the challenges we've had with business and general aviation in the States, there's this solidarity between all the alphabet organizations. I mean, NBAA comes together with GAMA and NATA, and AOPA jumps in there if they have a dog in the fight. And how many times have we thwarted user fees? And I guarantee you, privatization. I've seen something. Yeah, that privatization of the is going to raise its head again. So
and the administration supports that. That's a big one.
Yeah.
Well, look,
People
one of the
aren't even talking
reasons they all
about that.
come together is you're on the board of pretty much all of them, Luke. By the way, we're not doing the prize from Oshkosh because the only person who guessed it right was the other person in the bar last night. It's 70 years running you've been going to Oshkosh.
Oh, this year will be my
It's
70th.
70. Wow. Yeah, well, I don't think we need everyone to shout out how many other things. Closing, how would you define the US, this is an easy question, US aviation market, business aviation market in 2025 in one word, David?
Strong.
Booming.
It's going to be robust again. The focus, yeah. One word.
Yeah, I'll go with strong.
Strong.
So that's it. A nice, cheery panel to end. Thanks so much to everyone for coming. Thanks to all our sponsors.